Yep.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm recording.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday on our newest installment on diversity, equity, and inclusion training. This opportunity is presented to you by United Way of Southwest Alabama and also the South Alabama Coalition of Nonprofits, thanks to funding from the Alabama Power Foundation. So we are thrilled to have these partnerships and support to bring this to everyone on the call. Today we are going to be discussing, socioeconomic class and unconscious bias. And we have our two presenters that I'm going to introduce now, even though one has popped up under her coworker's name. So she's thrown me for a loop this morning. And that would be Lakeisha Williams from Mobile Community Action. So thank you, Lakeisha, for joining us this afternoon. And then also we have DeWanda Davis with Elevated Careers. So thank you both for taking the time out of your schedule to provide us with some insight and have a thought-provoking conversation today. All right, so let's just dive right in. I will like to share that we will have time at the end of the call for any questions that you may have. So just know that we are allotting for that. So let's get a better understanding of what we're talking about as it relates to socioeconomic class. So DeWanda, do you want to share why socioeconomic class is important to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Okay, sure. Hello, everyone. So before we really even begin, even to dive into why it's important, we have to understand the what before we can even navigate our journey to the why, or the how or the when. We have to understand the what. And so simply stated, a socioeconomic class, and it's a way to categorize and to describe people based upon 3 or 4 things. And those things are generally education, their income, their occupation, and their location. So, and location meaning where they live. Those are the 4 main ways that socioeconomic class is pretty much defined or separated, if you will. And then we have the break off, which is the primary social classes. And we know those as generally the upper, middle, and lower class. And now we have the subcategories. We have upper, middle, lower, then we have working, lower. There are so many little subclasses, but why it's so important, it's because once we begin to understand who we are and our own specific biases that we have, we can better help assist and support the people that we serve, our community, people that we come in contact with. We can find better ways to, as we dive into understanding ourselves more, we can help to open our eyes wider to understanding other people and not viewing them for what we see. So, and I'll just say, give you a little example. I have an aunt that is legally blind. She's been that way, all her life. She doesn't have what people would call maybe the blind stare, if you will. So if you're speaking with her, you would have no clue because her eyes are very clear, but she's looking directly at you. And one of the things that, because I grew up with knowing that she was blind, one of the things that I appreciate is that while she can't see, it's like sometimes I think for the people that can see, it's almost like if we could live in her world and not see, like how much better, could we be or become if we could deal with people not for what we could actually see. and just by who they are and what they're presenting. So that's kind of why it's very, very important to understand and to apply DE&I, but starting with self.
Thank you for that definition and applying it to what we're here to accomplish. So Lakeisha, how does this tie into your day-to-day operations?
Great question. Good morning, everyone. Well, what is it? Afternoon, everyone. Good question. I'm glad she did a definition because we are strictly community services, community action, Head Start. The programs and services that we represent and that we provide are all low to moderate income based. And luckily, in the last couple of years, we've been able to say moderate because things have started to shift finally. Like when we said low income, we meant low income, and that was typically true. A lot of people were not qualifying who would just be a few dollars over. A lot of seniors weren't qualifying for services. So for us, it is a daily conversation because it's dictated by our funding. So there are people who are turned away immediately just because of their income being too high. We know it. I know what programs you qualify for based on what you present to me at the initial interview. So it is rooted in everything that we do. And luckily, we have all these great partners who we know somewhat what our guidelines are. We can refer people to you when we know that we can't provide a service for someone. But our target demographic is low to moderate income, and moderate is true now. And since COVID, it's made one of our programs in particular, CSBG, the umbrella that I work under, that the entire department works under, used to be at 125%. I've been here 14 years now, and it was at 125% of poverty. And now it's at 200%, and it's not going anywhere. Like that was a major shift. And a lot of families who normally wouldn't qualify for services are qualifying for services. We're able to expand that, not even just the amount of people we're assisting, but it's varying on who qualifies for those services now too, because it's household and income size. So.
And that ties into the next question that I was going to ask. So as it relates to socioeconomic class and your work, how have you advocated for change and share the successes and challenges that you faced in that process?
I can answer that. One of the things with advocating for change, I myself, I'm very passionate about workforce development, career coaching, upskilling in the workforce, cross training, you name it, all of those things that could put a person in any individual in position to better, themselves, their life, and just have more skills to offer in a way that they could put themselves in a better position professionally. Now, so one of the ways that I advocate for that is just by encouraging and facilitating trainings around people overcoming their unconscious biases. That's one of the things I mentioned earlier, just acknowledgement and awareness is key. And so a success in that is when individuals become self-aware and they commit to changing their behavior and commit to understanding the world around them and with the idea that they are, that we're in this together, the world as a whole. And so we have people, just because individuals don't look like you, don't live where you are, they may not drive the same vehicles, their kids may not go to the same school, they may have the same income. That does not mean that they're of a lesser status or a lesser class, because you don't know a person's situation. We have some of the most intelligent, some of the most educated, some of the most skilled people that are just in a rough patch in their life. We have veterans that are out here that are struggling, but yet we're living off of, freedoms that they fought for. So there are so many different, so that's kind of a challenge area of getting people to really just understand the deep holistic definition of what unconscious biases are. And then the challenge, so the success is that, and then the challenge is for them to just is not committing to stay in a place of self or a place of ignorance, if you will. It's like coming to the fact, just the richness of how much better we could be as a society if we were willing to see things from a different perspective. So those are kind of like some of the successes and challenges that I face. And then on a daily basis is also sometimes getting people to see the better within them, seeing people the way you see them. Sometimes they don't see themselves in a great place or see their own, self-worth. So that's a battle in itself. Is trying to fight, to get someone to see their own greatness.
That was wonderful. Lakeisha, do you have something to add to that as well?
Yes, I also, I agree. I like, keep letting her speak first, because I feel like my responses are so programmatic, maybe because I'm in reporting stages of the year where I'm putting numbers together and crunching things and doing some evaluations. But when I saw this question, I heard you stated this question, the first thing I thought of was actually advocating for expanding those qualifications for people.
Mhm.
So when the 200% was approved for CSBG, typically our other programs follow that guideline. And it was a bit of a conversation for a couple of months to convince those to agree to expand that qualification across the board for all programs that were not locked in with grant qualifications. And so now anything that is outside of a grant, and like if someone donate funds to us, or if the agreement we have with Mobile Water for Neighbors in Need, that income guideline has been expanded to include those households as well. So we're not having to disqualify a household because that income guideline is still stuck at 125. So I may be very literal with my response to the question, but actually campaigning and advocating for that and having those guidelines expanded to include those households.
No, I think it's great. I think because that's what creates rich discussions and rich topics, because if the information, ties together, then whatever you're saying, then I'm able to support, or whatever I'm saying, you're able to support. Again, it's just from a different perspective. So we are actually defining, just how you look at things from a different viewpoint, but there's still a common goal. So no, I think it's a rich discussion just starting out of the gate. So
thank you.
Absolutely. So let's shift gears. DeWanda, you've already touched on unconscious bias,
okay.
But as community stakeholders, as leaders of our community, what tips can you share with this group to bring unconscious bias to the forefront of our work and make it, something that we consider on a day-to-day?
Okay. When it comes to your work, I can give you kind of 3 really, really simple, fruitful points, and I think we would, and when I share them with you, if we as individuals and professionals, no matter what our area of profession is, if as leaders in the community, like the stakeholders, the people that are, the boots on the ground, if we all can come together with these principles, it would just be dynamic for the communities that we serve. Number 1 would be just encourage diversity and inclusivity, by committing to like a zero tolerance in your own space. You might not be able to change the system as a whole, the system that you work for, the space that you're in, but you can change the space that you individually operate in, which in turn, there's the saying, be the change that you want to see. You be the light that you want to shine. So start with encouraging diversity and inclusivity by committing to just a zero tolerance in your own space. That's one. The second one would be is even go so far as provide training for maybe coworkers, employees, managers, just provide specific intentional training. And one thing about it is, and that can be creative. People think about providing training, oh, you have to be the person that sets up the professional development or leads the training. You don't have to be. You can just share something and you have actually provided some type of training. You've actually fed someone something that can put them, give them a different vantage point. But for the stakeholders, I would definitely, people that can have a part in that, I would say provide training for the front line, the leadership, especially, that on unconscious biases and other DEI related topics, cultural competence, so many different areas, but break them down section by section, little bit by little bit. And then the third one, hire the right people that align with the goals and the mission of the work. Put the right people in the right places. If you have people already in place and you recognize they're not in the right place, shift. There's nothing wrong with a shift. The wind blows sometimes and we enjoy it when it does. So shift them, it's okay. And you may realize that you are indirectly kind of cross-training at that time. So you're creating a better and potentially creating a better employee, or you're creating a space for the next employee to come. So either way, definitely hire the right people that will align with the mission and the goals of the work that you're doing wherever you are.
Absolutely. And we actually participated in a training regarding burnout a couple weeks ago. And that was one of the indicators was, reestablishing or re-identifying or realigning with our why. Like, why do you work at United Way? Why do you work in the nonprofit field? Why do you provide services to the community and advocate for the community? So, yeah.
Burnout is real and it's okay to not be okay. Like, if people would get that, it's okay to not be okay. So.
That's great. How do I follow that? Again, I'm taking notes, so I'm not even sure if I'm on task. I'm taking notes of everything you stated. And I may have taken it literal again, but one other thing, before you mentioned about understanding that some people are not just in a position permanently. Like some of the households and individuals that we assist are not just, typically a household who may have a person who has disabilities to receive Social Security benefits may be in a place where income's not going to shift much without cost of living, without maybe some SNAP benefits and those different things. But there are some households who can shift and make things change for themselves and be in a different status, or it's temporary. COVID came, great resignation. Children at home, different things happen for these families. So they're in these temporary states and these different statuses at times. So staying alert to what's happening. One thing that we had to do last year, as things were opening back up, was pay attention to the cost of things. Gas went up, food went up. Those things went up. So we had to shift toward the needs that people were calling and requesting it and seeking assistance for. We can't say, here, let me pay your power bill, and they're telling you they have no food. So figure out how you can actually touch onto those different areas that they're requesting and needing those other areas of deficit in. It may be a temporary thing with different ways that we can assist and refer, really strengthening those relationships with the different organizations in the community so that you can spread this love around. I'm sure you all don't just send people to community action. We try to share that love and refer to one another.
Absolutely. And you kind of touched on, assisting with a hand up versus a handout. And we kind of just discussed from the point of view that unconscious bias in socioeconomic class, as it relates to us individually, is based on our personal experiences. So, DeWanda, do you have any advice to kind of just really solidify that to make us more aware in our interactions?
Okay, I'm going to ask you, can you repeat the question? I was actually about to respond to, was it Dr. Shearer in the comments? And I was like, oh, I love that. So my apologies. Can you repeat the question?
Gotcha. So it was as unconscious bias and socioeconomic class, how our perspective of that is, it's internal. It's based on our own lived experiences.
Right.
And just really solidify how we can recognize that as we work with those in our community, like to tie into what Lakeisha's just shared, about supporting our neighbors with a hand up versus a hand out.
Okay. I would say just kind of decommit to everything you thought you knew to be whatever it is that you thought it was to be. The way that people would look in certain, places and times, the way that you think people sometimes should even act or behave. Sometimes if you the energy of someone, I'm not saying be okay with someone being aggressive with you or I'm responsible. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying if a person is agitated and they're in need of a service, and their stomach is touching their back, they're going to be agitated. They're going to appear to just not want, they need your help, but maybe they've been in that space for so long, or other people have failed them. Other services have failed them. So now they come into your space with the expectancy of another failure. Mm-hmm. So that gives an opportunity again to be the change that you want to see, because they are, we are here to serve. That's a part of what we are supposed to be doing as humans, is to serve. And to serve there's no greater gift in life than to be a servant to someone else. It shows a great sense of humility that I can decrease me to see and help and assist to meet your needs. And and that may be, like Lakeisha mentioned, many of the services that they offer. Her willingness to dig a little deeper to see, what can I do to assist this person? How can I help this person? Reverse the roles. If this was me, how would I want someone to help me? Would I want someone to, be rude or to my mom, not help my mom? You have access, but because you're having a bad day, you make her suffer, because you're having a bad day, or you have technology challenged, as I call them, the tech no-nos. So the tech no-nos of the world, meaning that they just know nothing about technology. They want no part of technology. Technology is an and a no-no. So don't make that person suffer because of their lack of knowledge or openness. It could be a fear. People fear what they don't understand. So it's just getting out of your own way and open up your mindset to the idea of, I'm here to serve. Whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm here for service. And that's what I think that's the first thing we do. Once you commit to that, then you can become better at whatever it is that you do, and you'll be surprised at your own self. I'm telling you, you will feel so much better. There's no greater feeling than to know that I said one thing, did one thing, accomplished one thing that made someone else better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Lakeisha, did you go?
Yes. The one thing that I thought, a few things went through my mind, but of course I was paying attention and I was writing notes from what you said. But basically a human recheck. I think sometimes, not just in the service industry, just in life, we need to recalibrate on our own personal humanity, and then remember that the person across from you is also a human. So like you stated, if someone coming to you in that moment of crisis, they're beyond just that person at that moment. They have a whole history before they walk through the door. So putting yourself in their shoes, even a measure of it should be enough to humble yourself to be able to receive exactly what they're requesting and see beyond that immediate need. And we just hired some new people, and we're doing new hire training and talking and communicating with people. And sometimes it goes through my mind about, how do I wish I was trained when I first got here? Because I also came through around the time of ARA, the first ARA, ARA. So, it was busy, money, a lot of stuff was going on. So they didn't have time to sit me aside and pull me aside. I just had to learn as I went. And luckily it was just me, but this is like a group of people. And so just imagining what would have been better if I was introduced to this concept this way, or this group or this entity. And so trying to see where they're coming from, knowing their ages, knowing their background, where they're coming from, and how to try to figure out a better way to approach where they are to help to move them forward.
Absolutely. DeWanda, did you want to respond to the positive feedback in the chat? We'll save the questions for the end, but I didn't mean to cut you off earlier. I apologize.
It's okay. I just kind of went sidebar. So that's why I was like, I'm so sorry. I was reading and trying to respond. We can discuss those at the end all together, but I just really wanted to say, I like that comment when she said, like, spotlighting when people do exhibit the correct habits and consistently, and praise promotes persistence and positivity. She could not have said it better, because when you actually speak to and give energy and light to someone's efforts, I don't care how small they are, if you see the effort, it's a grand experience internally to be acknowledged for something you are really trying to do and trying to change and trying to work hard at. So, and when people are committed to that, then absolutely they should be acknowledged. They should be rewarded. And rewards don't always come as, monetary things. It's not always a raise. It's not always a promotion by way of position. Sometimes it's just quickly as those 3 words, I see you and thank you. So those different things. And then even with the clients, the people that you serve, acknowledge and praise them. If you see that person walked in and they were like raging hellfire and brimstone when they sat in front of you, but by the time you spoke with them and they gave you 5 or 10 minutes of their time, by the time that you start to see that energy and that wall begin to come down, acknowledge that. Say, thank you for giving me time to talk with you. I knew we had services that you could benefit from. There's so many different things that I can share with you. I can show, just so thank you for giving me the time. That will go a long way to people that feel unseen, unheard, unappreciated, just to say thank you to them, to say thank you so much, for your time, and just remind them, I'm here because of you, meaning that you and other people need our services. So I want you to get that. Not in a negative way, I'm here because of you. No, I'm here because, for a great reason, there are services that I want to share with you. So I just want to kind of reverse that. It's not always the stakeholder in the leading position. Sometimes we have to, step from going from being the teacher to the student, allowing our client to teach us how to respond in different situations. And I hope that makes sense.
It did. And thank you for sharing that point of view, because we all just need to be reminded that it's not just us, we are assisting our neighbors in need. So speaking about our neighbors in need, how can they access vital services to prevent homelessness and even care for their family?
This is one of my refer conversations. I'm a person with the agency who does a lot of reporting and needs assessments and focus groups, and just reaching out to the community, like the actual individual stakeholders, and just to see what is already available versus what we offer. And the biggest lesson we learned that we learn over and over again is not trying to recreate that wheel. Mobile has a homeless coalition, and referring to them is our best resource in this moment and the moments of the last several years, honestly. So trying to tackle something that is already is being tackled is you can't do everything, and you should learn that lesson, but have a decent, a better than decent referral system on how you can send those families to the places that can help them the most. And my biggest example with that is temporary shelter. So years ago, assisting families with temporary shelter when it was cold, when just certain things were happening, and not even going along the lines of individuals taking advantage of that. But the reality of what temporary shelter does is temporary relief. And you're also making contact with a family that you now should have some type of case management with. And they are dealing with something that is beyond my capacity to help with. So I should not entertain that relationship. I should connect them with someone who can do the rounded services for everything that they need. And I think too often we do more than we should do, thinking we can do everything. And in this topic in particular is one of the ones that over the years, it feels harsh. Like I'm answering the phones this week. It feels harsh every time I'm telling someone and referring them to a place, but I know they're going to help them. I know if that's the actual need they're calling for, they're going to receive that help. But with me, it will be a conversation. And even if I can do a night or two in the hotel, you're going to call me in 2 days and say, hey, the 2 days are over. What am I going to do next? And we learned that lesson the hard way, because those families would come back and back and back. And there was nothing else we were equipped to help them with. So again, refer, especially when you know someone is providing those services, thorough services in that area.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll say if I don't know how you all feel about like the 211 services. So one of the things that I was going to mention with that is, if you know nothing else, you don't know where to send them, where to start with 211. We know what 911 is. We know what 411 is, so 211, put that one in your arsenal. That was something that, because in that, like the different lanes and the different resources that, so Keisha spoke of, I may know that this person does need assistance with, say, food banks, knowing what nonprofits are offering, food banks, or different days that they do, maybe private, sessions where they don't open to the community, but they allow certain people to come in at certain times. I may know that exists, but I don't know how to, when, where, how, or how to get that person to it. So if you have a generalized resource like 211, like she said, let the people that do it, get them where they need to go. You just be the bridge. The final destination is not your responsibility. Your responsibility and my responsibility is to be the bridge if I don't have the answer to get them where they need to be. But I do have the ability to get them to the next step. So that's everybody knows what it feels like to be left on the I don't know, or left on, if you have the iPhone, people say they left me on red, so meaning like, I know they saw my message, but you left me on red. So that just means like, I don't know what's next. Don't leave someone in this section. They came to you for a reason, maybe because they didn't know where else to go. So if you just have one centralized place, a bridge, just get them there, and then they can take them on across.
Thank you. And in full transparency, we did not pay her to say that. 211 is one of our programs at United Way.
And I knew that, and I was like, they're going to be like, really? So is that your plug? Like, it was,
no.
Listen, it was my shameless plug, but it was my valuable shameless plug to like, hey, I'll take it all day too, because I have seen, now that you said, because if you hadn't said anything, I would have just kept going. But but I have seen the amazing results, the things that you can't share because, you know, of confidentiality and things like that. I've seen the amazing results. And if I don't know everything. I don't know, you know, the places, I don't have access to everything, but I can be a bridge and I can get you to 211. Hey, that's where you need to go, you know? And so that's
Well,
my,
that was a huge advocacy moment. So thank you for sharing that regarding 211.
Total agreement, total agreement.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
Well, we have some wonderful questions in the chat. So do we want to take some time to look at those and then we can end with final thoughts? Let's see.
The last question. Oh, you said it first. I work backwards sometimes. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go with the last question.
Maybe because it touched home some, but the last question. Too often in nonprofit work and philanthropy, the voices of individuals in a higher socioeconomic group determine where the money flows and how programs are crafted. Do you have any suggestions on how nonprofits can do a better job of collaborating with and centering people in poverty and decision making? I love this question because at the core of community action, of how community actions are functioning throughout the entire nation, a third of our boards are community-based individuals. So it would be parents from Head Start, community members from the different locations that we have our sites in, and then it would be elected officials and someone from people from private sector. So a third of our board since the incarnation of community action have been representatives of the community themselves. So every audit, every question, everything brought before the board is also presented to the community in a sense. Those individuals who represent the community also go back to those areas that they represent, and they're supposed to inform them on those things that they learn. And then that's how a good amount of our needs assessments are completed, because those community members go back to the community themselves. For instance, the Head Start representative meets with Head Start parents once a month and inform them on the different changes and things that are coming up. And they vote on things. They tell us yes and no on things all the time, as well as those who represent community services, my department. There are 7 individuals represented on the board are from the different areas that we represent as well. And they're just regular everyday people. They volunteer, they go to board meetings, and they're well informed on the things that happen. That's the easiest answer I have, because they are part of the decision making from the beginning. They're aware of everything that's happening within the agencies. And I know that everyone may not be structured in that manner. So I think that touches on what this question is asking, but of course it's not all encompassing on what she's getting at, I think.
I think that was a good answer. I guess you should start at the bottom. I can kind of work my way up a little. Then I like the idea, like with Brad Martin, he talked about, you know, as far as when you mentioned referrals, that just because you provide a service, you know, you still, like you said, if he provides a tax service or can provide tax help, but if mobile community action is in someone else's backyard, refer them there. You know, don't feel like, you know, there's something, everyone has a lane or area of expertise, and we can share a lane, but that's what enriches the experience. If we connect and figure out, okay, let's share this lane here, but let me figure out what my place is, what I do, let's figure out what you do, and then let's figure out how we can help each other. So we don't all have to be in individualized lanes, you know, like a tunnel, like it's tunnel vision. And because what happens when burnout it starts to come through? What happens when, you know, you're running to the end of your network or your resource list? If you haven't built relationships amongst your own community, how can you help and better serve the people that you're called to serve if you don't have a great professional community or relationship with individuals? So I love that. So referral is, you know, that's golden. It's golden. It says a lot about you too, that I can provide a service, but I'm still willing to refer it to someone, you know, refer someone else. So do you want to take the next one, Lakeisha? I guess we can just go for one and one. We can do a little.
Okay, let's see. Come up, Keisha.
I had Brad
Is that
Martin.
Brad?
So then I guess Shannon would.
Okay, he did taxes.
Mhm.
And
Definitely.
Shannon Shelley Tremblay, I can read it.
Okay, thank
She
you. I
asked,
saw it.
do either of you work with any of the anti-poverty organizations in the state? For example, Alabama Possible, the Poor People's Campaign, Alabama Arise, or Alabama Appleseed, etc. If so, how does that work inform your personal or professional work?
The only one I've heard of them all, but the only one that I've actually in Trinity Gardens, there is a representative. I cannot think of her name right now, with Alabama Arise. And as things are happening, we're invited to those community meetings from time to time. And I really feel this is a great. I copied this question earlier and put it on my notes so that I can look up some of this a little bit later, because I feel that since COVID, we've disconnected from a few things in a sense. I thought that was something that was actually on the rise, that type of connection with Alabama Rise in particular. And honestly, no, not at this time that I'm aware of.
Right. I would ditto that. The only one I have heard of, which would be Alabama Rise, but what I think I thank you though, Ms. Shannon, because it's like a call to action for me that you asked that question, because now I want to go back and dig a little deeper into that and see, okay, what are these organizations, and then how can I fit, or is there something that I can do, or is it another place that I can refer someone that I come in contact with? So thank you for your question, because now it has become a call to action to me, because I'm like, Alabama Rise, that's the only one that
That's the
am.
only one that's sticking out.
Yeah,
right?
that's sticking out to me. Okay, so the next one up, and then I see them popping up at the bottom, and so we'll just scroll back down. So then let's see. Okay, this is the one I think I was trying to respond to with Dr.
Yeah, it's
Francis
Miss
Shearer.
Fisher.
Okay.
It is Fisher.
Okay, so then it's about spotlighting individuals. Okay, and then I'll scroll back down to the bottom. Okay, she said Fisher from Training Guard. So I think we've answered all of the.
There's actually one more that we hadn't hit. It's, do you have any thoughts to share on the intersectionality between socioeconomic status and other dimensions of diversity, such as race or gender?
That.
I know, I'm like, that just inspired
Oh,
a different section.
that's kind of one of those things where it's like, have you ever eaten like a piece of something and it like hits you right here, and I'm like, ooh, okay, so you want to go there with that. Okay, so you said just basically things as it relates to are we, I want to drive that down a little bit more.
The reason I asked that question was because I had been looking at the work that the Women's Foundation was doing in Birmingham, and they were recruiting down here.
Okay.
And I was actually asked to come speak, my coworker and I, at a middle school last week, and they were studying poverty in our state. And we kind of did a breakdown from the nation, the state, the county, the zip code. And I was wondering, as I was looking at those stats, if y'all were familiar with the ways that poverty affects different groups, and if you had any thoughts to share on that.
Okay, so now that takes my answer into a different direction. That's why I was like, we need to kind of get a little clear on that, because I didn't know which way you were going.
Did I clarify it?
You did.
Because I really don't know how to separate one dimension of diversity from all the rest. I don't think it's a separate conversation. Being a Black woman, I don't think it's a separate conversation.
With meaning what part? Meaning dealing with race and diversity?
Dealing with poverty, race,
race, diversity, okay.
And gender and all the things.
Okay, so
disability.
It's not that it's a separate conversation. However, you do have to separate, each particular area that you want to be intentional about speaking on. Now, because diversity, it's just like someone says, well, I want to be an engineer. There are so many different lanes or so many different types of engineers. So there are so many different points and sub-points that fall under diversity. So you really can, however, when we talk about poverty and we talk about race, the stats are there. They are there. So I understand when you say about, speaking from the position of, being a Black woman, but though the stats, they are there. And I think what happens is you take them in bite-sized pieces. You can't tackle it all because it's too much. It'll be like trying to go back to school to get your master's or a doctorate. It'll be too much. Take it, and each piece that stands out to you based upon the population that you're speaking to or the community that you're servicing at that time. Think about think about whatever your ultimate goal is at that moment in speaking with that group of people and their level of understanding, and just give subpoints, give like talk points and just various things that they deal with in their community, in their culture as it relates to poverty, and then ways that they could overcome that, ways that they can get away or step or come out of the, or be different or come out of the stigma or of whatever defines their reason for being impoverished, if that makes sense, because the poverty is the problem. So now you need to find a way to give them a solution. They know that they're impoverished. They know that, whatever their reason may be, but give them a creative space or a ways to be a solution, which is kind of what we're doing now. It's like, what can I put in my arsenal that can help me be a solution to the problem? They know they have the problem. I don't want to come and highlight and add and further add to spotlighting what the problems are. Let me take the problems and figure out how can I turn that around, possibly be and provide some type of resources and solutions. I hope that's sort of answering, because I'm answering it on a very surface level that I think could kind of help, especially with the population that you were speaking to. You got to be really careful with the babies and the K-12 system and how much you actually divulge when it comes to them, because they're still minors, even though some of them are way more adult than some of the adults. We still have to look at, they are officially minors, so I hope that kind of helps. I hope.
So what's the question? Or, okay, I like the example you gave, and you stated you went to a school, so I'm thinking education. And so there was communication between you and the children at the school about, what was it?
There was, we were speaking to them about how poverty presents in our community.
Okay.
So we kind of started talking about how Alabama is the sixth poorest state in the nation. And we talked about where Mobile County is. And we talked about what it's like to be from whatever zip code you might be from. But then we started thinking about, how far do you go in sharing information with these kids? Because more women are in poverty than men, more Black folks are in poverty than white folks. Like you can't really separate out the other dimensions of diversity without, when talking about poverty, because it almost negates the efforts in working toward it. If more people with disabilities are in poverty, don't we have to work on the disability stuff too, in order to help people escape poverty? So it really it wasn't so much a question about how to speak to sixth graders as to, right, I guess, to what DeWanda was saying, where do you jump in on the problem?
Right. I wanted a little bit of context, because like the one that said, you can go everywhere. You can go everywhere with the topic. So even in just that example, just that instance, having to calibrate on how far to go. Do you go as far as discussing systemic,
Mhm.
you know, the fact that it's embedded in all these different institutions?
Right.
Because at some point in the conversation, it's like, wait a minute, but what can I do? You know, like, are you championing more about the education on the roots of things, or more on the how we can get out of different situations? And then you got to think about the politics of it. Think about legislation. You know, it's so meaty, and that's why of course, these conversations and these panels are just so important, because it touches on everything. And so we can just, in the example of the middle school conversation with the children, that itself could be broad. That could be an introduction to a lot of those children's minds on just different topics, and how socioeconomic status, race, and gender is already impacting the conversation they're having that day. Like, it's so important already that you're having conversations about what that means with housing and jobs and education, and how you can sometimes may have the same degree and experience as the next individual, but be in a totally different economic status, totally different outlook on life. Children or have access to the totally different education programs, not have the same access to housing, making the same income, the same credit history as the next person, and not having access to buy a house in Midtown in Mobile. And it's just understood by so many people. But how do you break that down? And how do you tear that down so that that's not the case? Yeah. You see, you have nowhere to stop. You don't know how to stop the conversation, because it just keeps going.
I was actually kind of putting in there, I was saying case scenarios are really great tools in moments like that to spark conversations, because I think it's a way, kind of think about a word bank. This is what I probably would have done. I would kind of think about a word bank and just asking them, if you hear this word, what does this mean? What is poverty? Define poverty. What do you think that is? Or, what do you think about discussions as it relates to, race and politics or race-based? So kind of pick some topics and then maybe have them share their experience. You become the student, allow them to become the teacher, and we will be surprised sometimes how much more that they know, and how they can enrich the conversation just because we allowed them to speak, or we gave them, a space to enlighten us, instead of always sometimes when we're coming to speak to people, you think as the subject matter expert, I know this, I have this information, I know how to tell, I know how to do this, I know what to tell you to do here, here's ABC, here's XYZ, this is how you can get 1, 2, 3, all of this. When sometimes it's like, take your plan and just throw it out the window and start from scratch. And just like, let's do a word bank in the education. They're familiar with that. Just allow them to just have, so you can even play around hot topics. So hot topics today, on the news and the world, they're talking about this. How do you think that relates to your community? What does that mean for you? How do you think that would affect you? And then when they don't know, tell them how could this affect you as a female, or, as a young man, how could that affect you? So that's just, and like she said, it's so thick and with depth and meaty. It's like, this is like a 3 credit hour course, maybe a 4 credit hour, because it needs a lab.
Because you need a lab.
Yeah, you need a lab. And it's like part 1 and part 2. It's like a 201 and 202 with a lab. So
well, we are actually unfortunately coming to the end of our time together.
Okay.
So are there any final thoughts or additional resources that DeWanda or Lakeisha you'd like to share with the group?
I do. I want to share with you also. As for myself, like I mentioned earlier, that workforce development, career coaching, that's and employee retention, things like that. Those are like my areas. I love those. That's what kind of gets me like, ooh. So But one of the things that a resource that I want to give you all that you can share with everyone, Lakeisha's given a lot of things when we talk about human services and things like that. But I want to give something from the corporate, from the career side of things. Like Bishop State has so many programs that are free to the community, free for the participants. They are through workforce development. If you just follow, there's 10-week programs. For example, there's an on-the-job training program that's 10 weeks long. So ALDOT heavy highway construction, where they could qualify for mileage reimbursement. They could third or fourth week into the program, they will interview with potential employers, where if they are selected for that on the job training portion, they will actually be paid while going to school. So there's paid on the job training along with potential mileage reimbursement. That right there could be the life changer. And then they're earning industry recognized credentials that they own, they keep, and can take anywhere and owe no one for it. Okay, so forklift certification, 1 week. There's a 6-week CNA program. There's ship fitting and marine electric. As a matter of fact, carpentry is starting this week, 10 weeks, evening time. Ship fitting and marine electric starts in 2 weeks, 5 to 9, Monday through Thursday, 10 weeks, and they leave with up to 4 different industry recognized credentials. A resume, they finish the class with a career training and resume writing program. So these are great resources. So while Lakeisha helps, with the childcare and the housing, okay, now what? So now we need to upskill, got a roof over your head, got food in your belly, got lights on. Now we need to get you into the workforce. Now we need to help you to, now we need to help you, help us, help the world as a community. We need that. So that's what I wanted to offer as a resource. So Bishop State Workforce Development Program, that number is 251-662-5400. Again, that's 251-662-5400. And yeah, that I think it's an amazing tool to have in your arsenal.
Yes.
That's great. Thank
I
you.
introduced DeWanda as Elevated Careers, but she also is employed with Bishop State.
Yeah, I am. So with Bishop State, I'm a project lead with workforce development, hence I love that area. So I'm in the community. I'm always doing, so Elevated Career Service is my baby, but workforce development is in my heart. I attend college and career fairs, community events, you name it. I'm out there trying to just get the message out that there's opportunities for people to help them survive, sustainability, earn better wages, things like that. So
wonderful. Thank you. Lakeisha, did you have anything else that you wanted to add? I mean, I feel like you presented your entire arsenal there at Mobile Community Action, but if there's anything else, please do share.
That's great. We are partnered with SADS, and we're paying for the medical assistant and CNA certifications through SADS. But this Bishop State thing sounds better. Maybe we should just throw that away and just get on board with this.
I love it. Fruitful connection. Well, we are at the end of our time together. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, DeWanda, for sharing this valuable information. Thank you, Lakeisha, for again highlighting it from our nonprofit service provider point of view. There is a poll. We always like to get your feedback on how we are doing as it relates to our training opportunities. And last but not least, this would not be possible without our DEI committee. And then also that sponsorship from the Alabama Power Foundation. So, all right. Happy Friday, everyone. Enjoy your afternoon. The sun is shining in Mobile and the boom boom is coming to town.
Yeah. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for having me. Thank you for the rich conversation, and just thank you for the willingness to just dig in the trenches and like, hey, let's talk. It has to be, we don't know until we talk about it. So thank you. I appreciate it.
So
Um,
sorry. Do you mind sharing that number to Bishop State one more time?
Absolutely. 251-662-5400.
Thank you
That's
so
my
much.
infomercial voice.
I appreciate
you
you so
all.
much.
Absolutely.
Bye, y'all.